मैंने जैसे बताया, आपने भी सुना ही होगा के अग्रवाल सर के बारे में, जो आजकल चेयरमैन एनबीए है, जो कि एक्रेडिटेशन बॉडी है और चूज करती है, जो कि सबसे टफेस्ट माने जाता है। क्योंकि सर मेरे भी 5 इंजीनियरिंग कॉलेज है, फार्मेसी कॉलेज है, मैनेजमेंट, मुझे मालूम है एक्रेडिटेशन इसे मतलब बुखार आने लगता है। अगर आप सोच लो एक्रेडिटेशन कराना है, मैंने कराया था 2008 से हमारे इंस्टीट्यूशन एनबीए एक्रेडिट एक इंस्टीट्यूशन हमारा, तो क्या पूरे 12 लोगों की टीम आई थी और 3 दिन रही थी और पूरे पसीने पसीने कर दिए थे, ये चीज वो चीज, मतलब कोई चीज छिपती नहीं है। तो एक्रेडिटेशन एक बहुत बड़ी संस्था है और जिसको सर चेयर कर रहे हैं, ग्रेट थिंग। और सर का आप एक्सपीरियंस सुनोगे तो मतलब मैं तो इतने लंदन पर्सन भी होते हैं, सर ने मैक्सिमम टाइम अपना एनआईटी कुरुक्षेत्र में निकाला है, 27 साल वहां के प्रोफेसर रहे हैं, फिर प्रो वाइस चांसलर रहे हैं सर जी, फिर जीजीआई हिसार में प्रो चांसलर रहे, प्रो वाइस चांसलर, फिर सर इंद्रप्रस्थ यूनिवर्सिटी के फाउंडर वाइस चांसलर हैं, जो कि एक बहुत बड़ा एक पद होता है, दिल्ली की एक बड़ी यूनिवर्सिटी है इंद्रप्रस्थ यूनिवर्सिटी, उसके फाउंडर वाइस चांसलर होना एक अपने में एक मिसाल है। फॉर्मर प्रेसिडेंट रहे हैं आईईटी के 2002 से 2004, फॉर्मर प्रेसिडेंट ऑफ सीएसआई रहे हैं 2007 से 2009, फॉर्मर प्रेसिडेंट रहे हैं सार्क 2008 से 10। बहुत सारी चीजें, सर के 400 पेपर पब्लिश किए हुए हैं, सर को लाइफ टाइम अचीवमेंट अवार्ड मिला है आईईटी द्वारा, सीएसआई द्वारा। तो अनमैच, मतलब वी आर वेरी फॉर्चुनेट कि हम इस टाइप के इमिनेंट पर्सन हमें गाइड करेंगे, हमें हमारे बताएंगे कि क्या ट्रेंड्स आ रहे हैं। उससे पहले सर आप बताएं, मैं थोड़ा आपको हमारे बारे में बताना चाह रहा हूँ कि हम सर सेज ग्रुप है, अभी मेनली मध्य प्रदेश में है हमारा एजुकेशन। तो 2 यूनिवर्सिटी हमारी, एक इंदौर में है, सेज यूनिवर्सिटी इंदौर है, एक भोपाल में, सेज यूनिवर्सिटी भोपाल। हम 2001 से एजुकेशन में आए हुए हैं। शुरू में हमारे स्कूल है भोपाल में, 2003 में हमने पहला इंजीनियरिंग कॉलेज डाला, फिर जैसे ट्रेंड चलता है कि फिर तीसरा डाला, दूसरा डाला, 2007 में, 8 में, 16 में, मतलब इट्स अ ट्रेंड। अब हमारे पास करीब करीब 18,000 स्टूडेंट हमारे पास अभी पढ़ रहे हैं, रूटीन में हैं। करीब करीब 45,000 स्टूडेंट हमारे पास आउट हो चुके हैं, हमारे एलुमनाइज हैं। तो एक बहुत बड़ा बुके है हमारे साथ में। तो हम सर अभी जैसे ही लॉकडाउन शुरू हुआ, हमने बहुत सारी चीजों की शुरुआत करी। हमने सबसे पहले एक सेज टॉक करके शुरू करा। हमने बोला जैसे टेड टॉक्स होता है पूरे वर्ल्ड में चलता है, हमने हम सेज टॉक करेंगे। मुझे बहुत प्राउड फील होता है सर, हमने अभी तक 25 मार्च से लेके अभी तक करीब करीब 1000 सेज टॉक करा चुके हैं। ये आज का भी एक पार्ट है सेज टॉक का, और उसमें बहुत बड़े बड़े स्पीकर्स हम लेके आए हैं, मतलब इंडिया लेवल के, कैलिफोर्निया के भी प्रोफेसर आए, ऑस्ट्रेलिया के भी प्रोफेसर आए, सिंगापुर के भी प्रोफेसर, जिन्होंने हमें मोटिवेट करा, गाइड करा कि क्या कैसे करना चाहिए। हर सेक्टर में हमने करा है। बहुत सारे पॉलिटिशियंस भी आए हैं, ब्यूरोक्रेट्स भी आए हैं, बहुत सारे आध्यात्मिक गुरु आए हैं, जिन्होंने हमें गाइड करा कि कैसे लाइफ को जीना चाहिए, कैसे अपने आप को और पॉजिटिविटी से भरना चाहिए। तो एक ये हमने बहुत टाइम से हम कंटिन्यूशन में करे जा रहे हैं। हमने सेज समर स्कूल शुरू करे, क्योंकि हमने सोचा कि अभी तो स्कूल कॉलेज बंद है, तो क्यों ना कुछ ऐसे इवेंट्स करे जाएं, ऐसे प्रोग्राम चलाए जाएं जब घर के हर फैमिली इसमें इन्वॉल्व हो जाए। तो लेडीज के लिए अलग, जेंट्स के लिए अलग, बच्चों के लिए अलग, बूढ़ों के लिए अलग, सब तरह के हमने सेज समर स्कूल करके एक श्रृंखला चलाई। और ये प्राउडली सर करीब 300 हम सेज समर स्कूल कर चुके हैं लॉकडाउन और अनलॉक टाइम पीरियड में। हमने हर परिवार को टच कर लिया, देश के करीब सब परिवार को। हमने चैलेंजेस, इसकी चैलेंज का मैंने प्रोग्राम चलाया। हमने बहुत सारी चीजें करी। हमने ऑनलाइन कोर्सेज, आप विश्वास करिए 25,000 से ज्यादा हमारे ऑनलाइन कोर्सेज पोर्टल्स पे डाल दिए हमने, यूट्यूब पे डाल दिए हमने, जगह जगह हमारे ग्रुप के प्रोफेसर्स ने बना के पोर्टल्स पे डाल दिए है। परंतु हमने सब कुछ इसलिए कर पाए क्योंकि मेरा एक ही मूल मंत्र है, योग साधना ध्यान के द्वारा हम काम करते हैं। तो हेल्थ को परफेक्ट रखना पड़ता है, ध्यान से अपने आप को प्योर करते हैं, और साधना करके ईश्वर से मिलने की कोशिश करते हैं। हम कर पाए सर, बहुत सारी चीजें कर पाए। हम रिसर्च विंग में बहुत सारे काम कर चुका है। हम कम से कम भोपाल में 6 पेटेंट करा चुके हैं, इंदौर में 4 पेटेंट के लिए अप्लाई कर चुके हैं। हमने बहुत सारी बुक्स राइटिंग करी हमारे प्रोफेसरों ने, रिसर्च में बहुत सारा वर्क करा। वो डिटेल्स भी सब भी आपको हमारे डायरेक्टर्स वगैरह बताएंगे। हम बहुत सारा काम कर रहे हैं और कंट्रीब्यूशन में कर रहे हैं, और आप जैसे कि लोगों के द्वारा ही स्किल लेके हम इस टाइप के काम कर पा रहे हैं, और इट्स ए रेगुलर प्रोसेस। बड़ी खुशी है सर आप आए। मैं आपसे अब शुरुआत करना चाहूंगा, आपसे थोड़ा हमारे इमर्जिंग ट्रेंड्स हायर एजुकेशन में और एक्रेडिटेशन में क्या करा जाए। क्योंकि मुझे लगता है डिजिटल वर्ल्ड हो गया है आज के टाइम पे, बहुत स्मॉल वर्ल्ड हो गया है। आप अभी मेरी 1 घंटे पहले मैं एक सेल्स टॉक में प्रिसाइड कर रहा था, हमारे कॉलेज की थी सर, वो भी प्रोग्राम था STTP का। उसमें से प्रोफेसर, एक ऑस्ट्रेलिया से प्रोफेसर था, एक नॉर्वे से थे जो गेस्ट थे हमारे। तो बहुत छोटा संसार हो गया है। अब हमें कैसे इसको हमें मर्ज और करें डिजिटली, हम कैसे इसको और मर्ज करें हमारी यूनिवर्सिटीज को, हमारे इंस्टीट्यूशंस को, कि हम आगे बढ़ पाए। प्लीज सर, के कृपाल सर, प्लीज।
डू आई स्टार्ट और?
यस सर, प्लीज प्लीज।
अच्छा, आप एक ये बताइए मुझे कि कुछ समय आप क्वेश्चन आंसर्स के लिए रखना चाहेंगे
हाँ
या
सर, बाद में थोड़ा क्वेश्चन में आंसर 10 मिनट दे दीजिए सर हमें।
तो
आप
10 मिनट बाद में रख देते हैं।
यस सर, 30-40 मिनट का आप अपना स्पीच दीजिए सर, हमें बताइए थोड़ा 30 मिनट का।
तो दूसरा ये बताइए मुझे कि हिंदी में तो जरूरी नहीं है, मैं
नहीं
दोनों
नहीं,
में बोल
इंग्लिश बोलिए सर, हमारे सब प्रोफेसर से मिक्स बोल दीजिए आप, जैसा
सकता
आप
हूं। पर
जिसमें
मुझे
कम।
दोनों में कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, तो मैंने
सर
दोनों में
बिल्कुल, आप सर बनिए लोग तो हर जगह लीड करते हैं सर।
बोली। ओके फ्रेंड्स, Sanjeev Agarwal ji and Manish ji and other distinguished faculty members of this group of institutions and the audience here. My colleague from computer science, Dr. Rajesh Shukla, sort of pressed me so hard that I have to give an hour for their institution. I've just finished one program at 11 and I have another at 12:10. And but then I squeezed this time because I know this group of institutions and they are doing well. Because having been in technical institutions for about 5 decades of my life, I have a fair idea about various institutions, how they are doing. And it's always a pleasure to be interacting with a good institution for two reasons. One is the interaction is always a learning, so I also keep on learning. And second is, if we can be a little bit of helpful for institutions to move ahead, I think that's our role in society at the moment. And I personally feel we should be doing that as far as possible, to the extent possible. And lockdown period came as a opportunity for this. I mean, you could have never arranged 1,000 sales talks even in a period of 5 years if
Yes sir.
lockdown were not there. So lockdown, I am seeing it as an opportunity, although it's a very bad thing which has happened and led to many chaotic situations. But if I look to some things, some very good things have emerged out of it. First is that we have started doing activities which we never thought we'll do. And they are all meaningful. They make a lot of sense to us. Second is, let me tell you, there have been instances in the whole world where lockdowns have produced excellent results. I'll give you just one example. Newton, whose name all of you have heard, is a great scientist by itself. I mean, whether you talk, of course, the basic hypothesis of laws of gravitation is one, but then mechanics, Newton laws of motion, optics, Newton rings, or whatever, he contributed so much to the science and engineering. And I was reading, I mean, he discovered Newton laws of gravitation, which all of you know, when he saw an apple falling. Now, it's not for the first time somebody saw an apple falling. Apples have been falling all the time, and billions and billions of people have seen apple falling. Nobody discovered laws of gravitation. Even Newton must have seen 100 times earlier than apple falling. But during the lockdown period in 1665, his university, Cambridge University, was closed for more than a year. It was, to be precise, about 17 months the university had to be closed. And he was at home doing a lot of research. As a matter of fact, if you read his life sketch, much of the research which he did later had its original during the lockdown period, because he was able to think very coolly, very calmly, not rushing about, not running to the university, not interacting with colleagues, not having so many meetings, and he could concentrate on research very heavily. And it was on one of the lockdown periods, he was sitting in his lawn, he saw an apple falling, and he started thinking, why is it? and here came the laws of gravitation. So why I am trying to tell you this is, COVID is an very, very unfortunate situation for the whole world, including India. But nonetheless, we have to learn, number one, to live with it. Number two, how can we make the best use of this opportunity, which has unfortunately landed on us. So that is why I talked about Newton. Having said that, I'm so happy that your group has done 1,000 Sage Talks. I'm
Thank
sure
you.
every Sage Talk must have given you something.
Yes.
Sanjeev ji referred to TED Talks. I saw some of the TED Talks once upon a time whenever you get time. I found how two young girls made Indonesia plastic free. Just two young girls. They decided we will do it, come what may. And in the TED Talks, they explained how they did that. So if you can produce, some students, some teachers, some managements decide that come what may, I will do this. Lockdown may be an helpful period rather than a damaging period. Let us keep this in mind. Number one. Number two, I have started now looking at COVID as a virus, which it is a virus, of course, not I have started looking. It is a virus. And I'm a computer science student by sort of training. And I know when computer virus keeps you giving problem and you do one antivirus, second antivirus, it doesn't help. Then the last resort with you is reformat your computer. Take all your data on the hard disk and completely initialize your computer, reformat your computer, and start afresh. All of us have done this once upon a time whenever a computer gives us very serious problem. I look at COVID in the same vision. This virus is giving enough problems to us and making our life terrific at times. Can we think of now reformatting our systems? Start thinking afresh. Don't start thinking of cosmetic improvements, small changes, minor modifications. Can we start thinking afresh? And COVID has affected all sectors of society. Education is obviously one of the very large sections which have been affected. And I feel we can look upon this opportunity for a total rethinking, redesign of our education process, some of those dimensions which I'll come to. Friends, when I say redesign, I have several reasons and several suggestions which I'll take up one by one. First thing is the numbers. I'm sure you know because you run education institutions, the number of schools, colleges, universities in this country, and the number of students who had to stay outside their institutions is about 33 crores. Now, to take care of 33 crore students in the country with all schools, colleges, and universities closed was a very great challenge for the entire education system of this country. And let me compliment the general academic faculty of this country that they came to the rescue. They did a reasonably good job. I won't say the perfect job because they were never designed for this. But most of the teachers in most of the locations did a reasonably good job, even at the school level, college level, to keep the students busy during lockdown and reasonably successful. Now that has tested us that if we want to do something, we can. I think that's a great learning that we have all tested our systems, put to a situation, we do that. And that has been the characteristic of this country, that whenever we were put to a situation, a challenging situation, we have delivered. There was a time when wheat was refused to us. And we became not only self-sufficient in wheat, but started exporting wheat. There was a time when people refused to or were hesitant to take our satellites to the orbit. Then we acquired a capability that now we take satellites of other countries and put them in the orbit using our launchers. So whenever we are put to a situation, we have delivered. And let us take this as a situation. Look to the COVID scenario itself. the ventilator, which was such a crucial a piece of equipment. What have we done? What have our institutions done? People have designed ventilator of the size of a toaster in the kitchen, which can be placed on the bedside. Small table of the patient can be used at home. Now, a very remarkable innovation, which has come only because we were faced with the situation. Many of you who have done a scuba diving or something, you know, they give you a sort of helmet on which there's an oxygen supply. People have redesigned that scuba hat using just a valve, and that valve also is 3D printed using indigenous printers, which cost only 10,000 rupees. A printer which has been designed, work made in India using 10,000 rupees is used to design those valves, which converts all those helmets into ventilators of some sort. So that's the kind of potential we have. And my request and suggestion to all my teaching faculties has always been that our students have terrific potential. Our youth is full of energy, full of potential. Our systems only are not allowing them to realize their full potential. And I think it's a time to relook at those systems which make them come to their full potential. I give an example. I think about 20 years ago, or maybe about that time, I was chairman of a committee to approve a deemed university in the country. It's a good deemed university. Approval was not an issue. And today it is one of the highly ranked university. The group, as usual, had some schools also. And when we were interacting, the management of the university very proudly told me, they say, sir, our students are so good that they have done the complete networking of the school without having to take the help of a professional company. I said, so great. I said, but I smiled. She said, what, sir? I said, but you as a university will not exercise your powers of giving them exemption from appearing at least in the networking paper. Why should they now prove themselves by writing a theory paper on networking when they have demonstrated to you that they can network the complete campus? And by the way, universities are empowered to do that. Why are you shy of exercising that power and encourage these students as an example to other students that if you do a good practical work, if you good project, if you serve the society in any matter way, we will be able to appreciate it, give credit for this, and take it further. Other day I was addressing a group of industrialists. I said, just as you industrialists want to monetize everything, our universities will now have to learn to creditize everything. If a student does a good project at home during lockdown, when he comes back, shows me the project, what stops me from giving him 5 credits for that project work, which he has done? Many of my conservative teachers will tell us, sir, we are not sure whether he did it himself or this, that. Well, let me assure them, they know that many of them do not do even now themselves, and we accept it. So the point is, we have to give some authority of empowerment at every stage. And my take in the next future of education, very near future of education, is all our institutions will have to be empowered. All our institutions will have to be autonomous. The new policy of education has already declared that within 10 years, we'll get rid of affiliation system in this country. And that was a long overdue reform, which hopefully will come. Because affiliation system is a system which completely disempowers the teacher. Somebody else writes the syllabus and tells me you teach it. Somebody writes a book in the syllabus and says you follow this book. Then somebody else sets a question paper and asks my students to write the answers to those questions. And then some fourth person evaluates those answers who never knew what was expected by the examiner who set the question paper. I mean, that's the system in which we are living in. And this is an opportunity. We have to change that system and let teacher of a course be an empowered person to design, to evaluate, to assess, and uh, deliver the goods at the end of the day. We'll have to come to that culture. It will take time. I know percentage of bad institutions we have. So I, as chairman, National Board of Accreditation, Sanjeev ji did tell it's a very hard system. Yes, it's a very hard system, and I'll come to it why it's a very hard system. But is it not painful for me that I'm able to accredit only less than 15% programs in the country? I mean, this 15 should become 50 at least very soon. Because quality element is missing somewhere. If quality element is missing, one of the methods will be to grant autonomy to every institution, to empower every institution, and not only that, further, the universities will have to empower their colleges, colleges will have to empower their teachers. Why the teachers will have to be empowered is, I think you very well appreciate, and it must have been talked, I think, several times. We all had to shift to online education because we had to. Most of our teachers were never trained for online education. Most of us were decrying online education, particularly in engineering. We were saying, how can engineering be online education? We are on record to say that, many of us. But put to a situation, we had to shift there. Now, assuming institutions open next month, they will open with social distancing and all that. So you will never be able to have, never means another 6 months or so, the same number of students in the campus which we used to have earlier. Earlier, if you used to have, say, 5,000 students in the campus every day, now you might be able to have only 2,000 or 2,500. And remaining 2,500 will have to be at home. And therefore, you will have to design systems where the students come in shifts, or they come on alternate days, or whatever, complete flexibility of system will have to be built in. And thereby, we will have to decide which subject can be very effectively taught online and which subject cannot be very effectively taught online. I will still have to go to face-to-face education for those systems. And this analysis will have to be done from subject to subject, from course to course. History teaching may be different, civil engineering design may be different. And universities will have to learn, keeping in view their physical resources. I'm pretty sure physical resources cannot be doubled or trebled in 6 months' time. It will not happen. So we will have to do with the physical resources which we have. If our laboratory can accommodate, instead of 30, only 15 students maintaining social distance, I'll have to start using that laboratory for 15 students. And what do we do for the rest? I'll have to design a system. So you will have to go in for complete flexibility, utilizing your physical resources in the best possible fashion, and thereby optimally calculating what can be possibly done online, what cannot be, or what can be better done face to face, and have the students stagger, teachers' timetable stagger. And it is here where I think none else will be able to decide, sitting in Government of India or university, what to do. Your teachers will have to decide. Well, I can teach some part online, some part they will have to come to the class, and this will have to be this way. So every teacher will have to be empowered in the new system. Not only that, every student will have to be empowered. Because a student might come to you, sir, you have decided I will give you 40% online, 60% in the class, but I do not have electricity in my village. Or I do not have broadband connection in my village. Or I just do not have a smartphone. What do? You will have to say, okay, for you, I will have 100% face-to-face. So this ratio, blending ratio, will change from university to university, from course to course, from subject to subject, from teacher to teacher, from student to student. And our universities will have to prepare for all these permutations and combinations, that how can we continue to serve the students after we reopen, and therefore online education will remain one of the means of education even post-COVID. I mean, at least I don't see for a year or so we getting rid of online education, number one. Number two, having tried with this online education successfully, should we get rid of it? Probably not. There are several things which can be done better online than face-to-face. For example, say in physics, we teach a concept that if you rotate something, revolve, and if you revolve it at the speed of 11 kilometers per hour, it goes into the space. Now you teach this in the classroom, but how you demonstrate it in the laboratory? You can't rotate it at 11 kilometers per hour. But on the computer, I can show it. I can go on increasing the speed, and the moment the speedometer shows 11 kilometers per hour, it goes into the space. Now the concept will be very strongly built into the student rather than just teaching, and I could not have done it in the physical laboratory. In chemistry, if I want to show, if you mix chemical A with chemical B, there's an explosion. Now you can only tell there's an explosion. You cannot create explosion in the laboratory to convince him that there's an explosion. But you can show him on the computer screen that the explosion takes place. So there are good things about online education which we should adopt. I went to McMaster University, Canada about 20 years ago, and they were trying to experiment with online education in medical science, which we all believe is probably most difficult to go online. And they told me, sir, some very interesting thing. They say now when we teach anatomy to our medical students, we give them a dead body and ask them to perform dissection and all that. Now, if a student applies the scissor wrongly and teacher is not by the side, he never knows he has done a wrong thing. But in the anatomy online, if he applies the scissor wrongly, computer shouts at him, "What the hell are you cutting?" So therefore, he is learning not to make a mistake much better than doing it on the dead body alone. So what I'm trying to tell you is, having successfully experimented with online education, now let us try to find the best way forward between the amalgamation of these two modes, what ratio we can use, how physical resources can be used, how e-resources can be used, and how can I finally deliver the best to the child. Unless we bring child in the focus of education, things will not improve. And because you are dominantly engineering institutions, I hear. Now, if that be so, let me also tell you, engineering itself is going through a great transformation. You must have heard during these talks lot many times, we are passing through Industry Revolution 4.0. And Industry Revolution 4.0, we do not even know which day what happens. These computers appear to be a revolution 30 years ago. And today, the PC, which was a revolution in 2010, in 2015, it has already started phasing out. Today, we are selling more notebooks than laptops. So these trends keep on changing so fast, and things keep changing so fast that we just can't even keep up with the rate of change. And the Industrial Revolution 4.0 tells us that 65% of the students today, they will be doing a job whose title nobody knows. Neither the student knows what he will be doing, nor we teachers know, nor the management knows, nor the university knows, nor the AICT knows. So how do you design the syllabus? How do you prepare him? You will have to prepare him to face the new job as and when it comes. Because today's engineer will have about 8 to 10 job changes during his or her lifetime. Well, when we graduated, we started with a job, and most of us used to retire from that job. That is not going to be the scenario with the new graduates. They are always on the move. They will be on the move, and they will be required to be on the move. And therefore, very great challenge for us would be to keep them ready for all the changes in life. And therefore, my buzzword for all teaching institutions is learnability. We will have to ensure that the students are able to learn themselves. Give them hypothetical problems. Give them out-of-the-box problems. Let them come with funny solutions. And let's read them. Let's find what are the solutions. And maybe something very good comes out. I'll just give you a small story which I have repeated many times, so maybe some of you have heard it from me.
Please,
There was an examination in physics in a university abroad, and the question was, how will you measure the height of a tall building with the help of a barometer? Those of you who are engineers or physicists know that this is a very standard question. How will you measure the height of a tall building with the help of a barometer? Every book has an answer, every teacher teaches this, every student writes it. No difficulty at all. The examination had this question. A student writes, I will tie the barometer to a rope, go to the top of the building, hang the barometer down. When it touches the ground, I'll measure the length of the rope, and certain length of the rope is the height of the building. Now, it became a very serious question. The examiner says, what the hell are you saying? You are appearing in physics exam and you are giving me this answer? Where is physics in it? He says, sir, it is not important in life to use physics for the solution of a problem. A problem should be solved and solved correctly. Read your question. Use the barometer, I've used the barometer. Give the height of the building, I've given the height of the building. So where am I wrong? I've given you the correct height of the building using the barometer. That was your question. Well, many of you are teachers attending this. You know we are very sensitive people, and we said, he said, no, nothing doing. I mean, I can't pass you in physics. This is no demonstration of knowledge of physics. The matter went to the vice chancellor, and vice chancellor was a softer person like me, so he listened to both the sides, and he could find that the student has something in his upper story. But the difficulty we administrators do have at times is between a student and a teacher, to tell the teacher you are wrong is a little difficult, administratively difficult situation to handle. So it was decided, let's get a senior professor of physics from a neighboring university to resolve this issue. So he was called. Next day he came. He asked the student, we'll have re-examination in physics today. He says, here's a fresh answer book. Your exam starts now. He says, sir, question paper. He says, you write the answer to the same question again. Well, after about 25 minutes, the answer book is blank. He says, why? You're not writing anything? He says, sir, I have a problem. He says, what is the problem? He says, sir, I have about 6 correct solutions in my mind. Now, I do not know which one will you like. Because you will pass me only if you like my answer. You will not pass me if I give a correct answer.
बिल्कुल सही.
You will pass me only if you like my answer. That's my problem. And I have no mechanism to know which of my answers will you like. And therefore, I'm in a dilemma. I don't know what to write. $1 million situation. And well, the senior professor understood that this boy has a great knowledge. He said, okay, I'll give you A grade in physics, but let us discuss what are the solutions. He says, sir, solutions are many. Take the barometer in hand, take the pencil in hand, climb up the stairs of the building and keep on marking 1, 2, 3, 4. When you reach up the top building, you have marked 37,473 marks. So 37,473 multiplied by the length of the barometer is the height of the building. As simple as that. He said, boy, let's not be funny. He says, sir, I'm not funny at all. I'm trying to give you alternative answers. If you want a bit of fun element in this, I'll go to the chief engineer of the building and say, Mr. Chief Engineer, here's a very beautiful barometer which you can take home as a gift for your daughter. Please open your logbook and tell me the height of the building. That's also a way of solving the life's problem. I had to find the height I found. He says, no, but physics. He says, sir, if you're obsessed with physics, then I'll go to the top of the building with a stopwatch in hand, throw the barometer down. When it strikes the ground, I'll measure the time by stopwatch and apply your physics formula, S is equal to ut plus half gt square. So it gives you the calculate the height of the building. Now I've applied physics. He says, what else? He says, I'll go to the top of the building, hang the barometer like a pendulum, measure the value of G, and from that value of G, I'll calculate the height of the building. Again, I have used physics. He says, fine, but do you not know the answer which your teacher expected of you? He says, I know. So then what's the problem? He says, sir, the problem is this teacher has been giving this question for last 10 years. And all 60 students are supposed to write the same 10 lines. And he is happy with it. I was just trying to find out, can teachers read our answer books dispassionately, whether we have given a correct answer or not? Decision is theirs. But at least alternative answers should be evaluated properly.
Yeah,
now, according to me, this story is a great challenge for engineering students, because engineering solutions in life are never unique. It's only in our examination system. We say solve this differential equation and it is a unique answer. We say invert this matrix and it is a unique answer. We say design this structure and it is such a simple structure, it has a unique answer. In life, many of the senior people will tell me, if you have any engineering problem, it does not have a unique answer. And you have to think. For example, if I ask you how to give clean energy to everybody in the country, can it have a unique answer? No. If I say, how can I provide safe drinking water to every child in the school? I mean, I'm pained when the child every day morning, in addition to his 7 kilos of books, takes 2 liters of water with him to the school. We can't ensure that the safe drinking water will be available in every school, 100% ensure, so that every child is saved of taking 2 liters every day to the school. But does it have a single solution? No. So real life problems do not have a single solution. And engineers must be taught that the problems can have several solutions. And this could be contextual. A solution which is valid in India may not be valid in America. A solution which is valid in Bhopal may not be valid in Delhi. It depends upon several things. I went to Germany for a keynote address. The Germany, which was the part of East Germany at that time. And because I was state guest, the Vice Chancellor was taking me around a town. So when we were going, I found there are several roads which are not bitumen roads, which are sort of stone roads, the type of roads we have in villages or parks and all. I said, Mr. Vice Chancellor, what is this? Your tires must be going away every year. He says, yes, Professor Agarwal, you're right. I said, then why can't you make bitumen roads? He says, Professor Agarwal, stone is available in Germany in abundance. Bitumen we have to import from USA. So we'll be very happy if we have to replace tires every year, but not import bitumen from abroad. So that's a correct solution in that circumstance. So engineering does not have a correct solution most of the time, unique correct solution. And this is missing from our education system. Our education system must come to more open-ended problems, more visionary problems. Let us not look for exact correct answers. Let us look for the thinking power in the student. I mean, can a teacher in this country think of a question like this, which I read abroad? He says, the examiner gives a question. I want your thoughts. Will it be possible for us to have an elevator from here to the moon? Now look at the question. Will it be possible for us to have an elevator design which takes us to the moon? Write an essay on this. But that's a question which doesn't have an answer today. But it gives me the thinking power of the student, thought process of the student. That has to come in. Another story which comes from the life of Einstein says he was teaching for some time. When he was distributing question papers, his research assistant said, he says, sir, you gave this question paper last year also. You probably picked up the wrong packet for this year. He says, no. I'm giving the same question paper which I gave last year, but this year I expect different answers. because I have taught the course differently. So answers are expected to be different this time. Now that is the beauty of teaching which we have to go through. I read another case study. The teacher walks into the class. He says, write a question of your choice and answer it. I mean, imagine what a funny question paper. He says, write a question of your choice and answer it. Now, obviously, a student will write a question whose answer he knows. And then he says, your grade will not depend upon your answer. The grade will depend upon how intelligent your question is. Is your question thinking of higher order intelligences? We all teach them Bloom's taxonomy, recall, analysis, design. Can you design a good question which can give answer to several problems? So these are the kinds of paradigm shifts in higher education which will come, which will have to come if we want to take this country to where we wish to take it to be, what we call as Vishwaguru or something. Yes, we have the potential to be Vishwaguru, but provided we start making our education system creative, innovative, take it out of the boundaries to some extent, and many people will argue with me, sir, that will lead to indiscipline. I don't agree, friends, and I always give an example of internet. Internet is the world's largest system, but nobody knows who is the owner of internet. Internet does not have an owner. It's a system which runs of its own, and it's very disciplined. You type a comma wrong and it rebukes you. It's a very disciplined system without an authority. So we'll have to come to systems which become self-propelling, where student becomes learners, where student become thinking person. Machines is fine. A ratta and writing in the examination and getting A grade, absolutely good. But that is not giving me what I wish to have. And I say it's not according to me. It's not a coincidence that before independence, I got 2 Nobel laureates for India, Professor Rabindranath Tagore in Gitanjali and Sir C.V. Physics. And Sir Tagore wrote Gitanjali under a tree, and Sir C.V. Raman's laboratory, which gave him a Nobel Prize, had the total equipment of 250 rupees. So you do not need billions of rupees to get good research. Yes, it will help. I'm not saying don't invest in laboratories. It's a help. But if you think higher money will lead to more quality research, I'm sorry, that's not going to happen, and the proof is before you. Now we have invested so much in education after independence. Why is it I don't have a single Nobel laureate produced in any discipline in the country? Because we have made the systems so tight, so inflexible, so non-creative. A student is practically asked not to think. He is practically asked to memorize. And people tell me in JEE, the beauty is you should be able to answer the question without reading the full question. Then only you will be able to crack JEE. If that be so, and I was discussing the other day, using artificial intelligence, somebody has designed a machine which can answer JEE correctly 85% time. So is that machine better equipped to be engineered than a student who crack JEE? So we will have to bring more value to intelligence, more value to thought process, more value to free thinking, and more so for engineering education, because engineering education is transformative. We talk about Industry 4.0, but unless I'm able to connect the various disciplines, unless I'm able to give my student a thought process beyond his branch of engineering, things will not happen. And finally, friends, because my topic includes accreditation, so I'll take a few minutes to talk about accreditation. Please, because that's the my title of Sage Talk. So yeah. Accreditation, accreditation is a simple measurement of quality. And according to me, the way accreditation is taken today is not a real method of accreditation. First of all, accreditation by philosophy in India now is outcome-based education. our accreditation is not now input-based, process-based, it's outcome-based. I think you know that because you have universities and autonomous institutions. All tier 1 institutions are to be evaluated as per Washington Accord. And Washington Accord, if you know, is a sort of a memorandum of understanding between 20 countries of the world, where we decided for international mobility that is a student from one country, accredited institution, if he moves to another country, he is allowed to practice without further tests. So that is the beauty of Washington Accord. And Washington Accord has its members, USA, Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand, Malaysia, Indonesia, etc., etc. And India is also a member of Washington Accord. And I'm happy to announce at this forum that every 6 years there's a review of Washington Accord. It's a very tough review, much tougher than your accreditation process. And I had to face that. And last month we got the result. India has got further 6 years extension on Washington Accord to carry forward. And the beauty is, Sanjeev ji, is that we need 75% countries to support extension for any country. India got all 100% countries to support unanimously that India's system is so perfect that we all feel it should continue. And that's a matter of pride. So we have made the system little tougher, if I use the word, but it is not tougher. Let me try to explain. It is tougher today because let's see, how do we function? We start functioning about accreditation the day we think of applying for accreditation. Then we start collecting data. Then we start preparing SAR. And then ask teacher, 3 saal ka purana data do. Oh, he searches his house, he searches his cupboard, gives me 3 years data, I prepares an SAR. Then when the visiting team has to come, we do so many rehearsals, so many days that, I mean, I know of institutions which do nothing for 3 months except for preparing the faculty to face the visiting team. Because as Sanjeev ji rightly said, team says, ye lao, wo lao, aur to kahan se lao. Yes. The simple solution is this data collection should be a continuum. The day a teacher leaves, it should be recorded. The day a teacher comes, it should be recorded. The day he publishes a paper, it should be recorded. The day a student achieves something, it should be recorded. If you keep on making a real-time database, then accreditation will not remain a tough exercise for you at all. And as a matter of fact, I believe accreditation will serve the purpose only and only when it does not remain a tough exercise. I believe as long as you find swimming tough, you never enjoy swimming. You start enjoying swimming only and only when you feel like jumping into the swimming pool. You are not afraid of it. You enjoy bicycle only when you are not afraid of falling down. As long as you are afraid of falling down, you can never enjoy cycling. You can never enjoy horse riding as long as you are afraid of the horse. The day you feel you have in the control of the horse, then only you enjoy horse riding. So my appeal to all of the participants here is learn to enjoy accreditation. Have an environment where you have control over accreditation. And if you go over the exercise, you do not find any parameter which is rocket science. It's a complete detail of documentation which you have to go through. And if it's a good institution, sort of a reasonably ethical institution, keeping fair records, I personally feel there should be no difficulty in accreditation at all. The only point is we follow a system of outcome-based education. I will try to explain in outcome-based education in 5 minutes in very simple terms. See, earlier our evaluation and even today in some extent is what are the inputs, what is the process, and then we believe output will be fine. If I have taken the good inputs, if I have good machines, will the output be fine? I'll ask you, if you take good raw material, if you have good lathe machines, are you sure your nuts and bolts produced on the lathe will be fine? No. So outcome-based education is, we go in the other way around. Washington Accord defines that these are the 12 graduate attributes which we are looking for in every engineer. We want every engineer to be good in communication skills. We want every engineer to be good in problem solving. We want every engineer to have fundamentals of science clear to you. We want every engineer to be ethical and society concerned for society. We want every engineer to have lifelong learning. So these 12 attributes have been defined, and now we have to design backwards. What should I teach to make him know the final outcomes? As an electronics engineer, I gave an example the other day, I can repeat it. I say, supposing I know electronics and communication engineer will be required to design communication system. Now, if you will be required to design communication system, obviously he will have to design a sampler, he will have to design an ADC converter, he will have to design a whole circuit, and so on and so forth. And therefore, he will have to understand the circuit analysis, the transient analysis, so that he can avoid glitches. Now, if he has to avoid glitches, learn transient analysis, then he has to learn differential equations. And therefore, I must teach him differential equations. I should not teach him differential equations because it is written in the syllabus of the university. I should teach him differential equations because he will need to solve them for understanding what a glitch is. Why my computer suddenly hangs over. That's a transient behavior. So if I have to teach him to solve differential equation, I have to teach him integration, because otherwise how can you solve differential equation? If he has to learn integration, he has to understand differentiation, otherwise integration has no meaning. And therefore, my mathematics teacher must teach differentiation, then he must teach integration, then he must teach differential equation, then I must teach circuit analysis, so on and so forth. What I'm trying to say is, whenever you spend 1 hour in the class, at the end of the class, ask yourself, why have I wasted I'm using the word wasted in inverted commas. Why have I wasted 1 hour of 60 students? Ask yourself, will this knowledge be helpful to them in becoming a mechanical engineer or in becoming a civil engineer or whatever it is? Otherwise, why should he study your class? Now, if you are able to answer this question faithfully, then only it is outcome-based education, and then only it's real accreditation. Similarly, if you set a question paper in the examination, whether the question is a 1 mark or 10 marks or 20 marks, ask yourself, by asking this question, what am I testing? Which graduate attribute am I testing? Am I torturing the student to answer this question? If that is so, please forget about real accreditation. Yes, you will probably still get it from us because we are also not perfect. But real accreditation will be when you can justify every hour of teaching and when you can justify every mark of examination in the student's life. If you do that, that's a real outcome-based education. And believe you me, if you start experimenting this philosophy, it will take time. It will not happen overnight. It will take a couple of years at least, maybe 5-6 years. Because every teacher has to be involved in it. Every student will have to be involved in it. You will enjoy accreditation and you will come to me or whosoever is chairman at that time. Sir, come and visit my institution any day. No problem, I'm sure. I want accreditation to come to that level. And I see that as the next paradigm of accreditation. And finally, friends, before I close, I think all engineering students will have to be very much concerned about sustainability development goals of the society. We cannot de-link ourselves from the society. If you have read sustainability development goals, you will find we have goals like no poverty. We have goals like zero hunger. We have goals like good health and well-being. We have goals like quality education. Now, I hope you agree with me. If we would have followed the word, these goals, things would not have happened. For example, if we would have good health and well-being for everybody, what the hell COVID would have done? If immunity would have been strong with everybody, if food and nutrition would have been good with everybody, Corona would have gone back without attacking anybody because immunity was so strong. And even if it would have come, damage would have been far too less. So I think all of us in all spheres of education, and more so for engineering education, we will have to look to sustainability development goals in a very realistic manner and in a very India-specific manner. I always say, does India need lots and lots of Delhis and Bombays, or lots and lots of Bhopals and Jaipurs and Nagpurs? I think is a serious question now for us to answer. Very high level of centralization has not given us dividends, and maybe we can have a rethought on this. Similarly, for institutions, instead of 20 IITs, let me have 100 IITs, no problem. But let me not have fourth-rate institutions and close them as soon as I can. That's the way we'll take quality education forward.
Yes,
and I look forward to support from all good institutions like yours. With this, I end my talk. I wish you all the best and giving me the opportunity to interact with you. If there are any questions, I think for another few minutes, I can take it. Thank you.
थैंक यू सर, बहुत अच्छा, आपने बहुत अच्छा। मैं एक क्वेश्चन लेना चाहूँगा डॉक्टर, हमारे वाइस चांसलर इंदौर यूनिवर्सिटी से, यूनिवर्सिटी इंदौर के हैं, डॉक्टर रविंद्र भारद्वाज सर। सर आप क्या पूछना चाहते हैं एक इमिनेंट पर्सन से, जो आप कुछ हो तो सर अनम्यूट कर लीजिए, आप अपना अनम्यूट करिए, हो नहीं रहा है। राजेश, उनका अनम्यूट करो। अनम्यूट नहीं हो रहा है सर आपका। चलिए, जब तो अनुराग वर्मा सर आप पूछ लीजिए, आपका अनम्यूट है। अनुराग वर्मा सर।
Good morning, sir. It was a wonderful session by you, and the light you have talked to us, given us the direction and the pathway, roadmap as how we have to move for accreditation. We are qualifying for accreditation to go 21st after July, and we will be doing to it. We will be applying for NAC this time as an university. So we have already started the preparation for that. So I'll just like to know as to if we want to indicate some of the changes, like flexible changes in our system, how do we do it right now?
No, you see, wherever you are a university, I think you can bring in all the changes. Unfortunately, our universities, by and large, try to follow each other.
Correct, sir.
Say, for example, if I become a private university, I'll say, let me copy the Bhopal University, or let me copy the Indore University. To an extent, it may not be a bad idea, but let us start giving a fresh look. Let us start challenging the status quo, and you will bring in flexibility. And world today talks about flexibility in a very different fashion. See, when we talk about interdisciplinarity, you will be surprised if I tell you Stanford University, which is one of the best universities in the world, 2 years ago started a 5-year program in computer science and English. Now, in this country, it will be very difficult to convince somebody that computer science and English can be studied together. They started another 5-year program, computer science and music. Now, these are the kinds of new experiments which our new universities should be doing with some degree of risk. Well, some may find it difficult to have takers to begin with. So therefore, you might have a flexible system. You know, if you take this, you can have this combination, so on and so forth. Because being in a private setup, you also feel too much experimentation may make the student nervous. So, but between the two, I find you give it, for example, this flexibility. Well, if you want to study this course by a case study, it's okay. If you publish a paper in this, I'll give you credit for this. I mean, supposing a student is able to publish a paper in a good journal on manufacturing processes, then why it should be obligatory for me to ask him, "Nahi, 3 घंटे बैठो, ये theory paper लिखो, तभी pass होगे."
Very correct.
This is allowed. So I think these are the kinds of flexibilities. And word today do not say interdisciplinarity is physics and electronics, electrical and electronics. Word today says interdisciplinary is physics and philosophy. Can you study the two together? Mathematics and music. Can you study the two together? As a matter of fact, one very good academic researcher has written, ask a +2 student, which is your most favorite subject? And ask him which is your least favorite subject, and ask him to study both.
Correct.
So that he gets the best of what he wishes to, and he learns to face the worst.
Yes, sir.
No, the point is, this is an extreme degree of flexibility, but I think some bold experiments will have to be started, believing in ourselves. And with my experience, I can only feel that the students will love these things, provided we are able to talk to them in a communicative language why it is being done. If everything comes as a government order or as a vice chancellor's order, then things will not happen. We'll have to take them along, give it flexibility, because country will need a lot of flexibility in coming years to come. I was on a convocation address of a university, and a young girl after PhD, I said, where are you going? She said, I'm going abroad to this university. I said, why this university? Which department? She says, I'm going to chemical biophysics. Please understand. Can we have a department of chemical biophysics in this country? I think the vice chancellor will be declared crazy if he does that. But I said, why are you doing chemical biophysics? He says, sir, I want to study why some children are born deaf. Now, if I want to study why some children are born deaf, I must know the anatomy of ear. So biosciences must. I must know how the fluids in the ear work. So I must know chemical. And I must know the sound waves behavior. So I must know physics. So unless I know physics, chemistry, and bio, I will not be able to solve this problem. So do I conclude in this country will never be able to solve this problem? Because we will never have opportunities for a student to study these three. So some great combinations, I mean, these standard combinations should give way to some extraordinary combinations. Some of them will fail. Some of them will prove to be our failures, but that's the way to go about it. So I believe wherever you are a university, please try some changes. Wherever you are a college, try to convince the university. If they agree, fine. Otherwise, go ahead with what they say.
Yeah, this is
Good
what we have implemented.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good
Yeah,
afternoon.
Vice Chancellor, sir. Please.
Sure.
Sir, it was wonderful listening to you on this topic and learning from you. But you or I became Vice Chancellor not by virtue of simple education, we became by a process. And similarly for accreditation, accreditation is a process which should be inculcated from day one, and right from the day, as you said, the faculty joins. That's the way our systems are. But my fundamental question is, there are two aspects of education. One aspect is that you need a integrated, somebody studying 10 different subjects, a flexible system. On the contrary, if you see, a goldsmith's son knows how to do it. That means there are doers and there are producers. Universities becomes producers and the industry is a doer, right? Now, Skill India will become Skill India. We have borrowed now a Britisher system. We have not remained a family-owned system like a son of a Smith Goldsmith remains a goldsmith. We have crushed that industry also. The government has not at all subsidized or given any money, has not supported the higher education at all. Now country has 350 government and 500 higher education institution privatized, where the infrastructure also becomes a problem because of lack of finances. In the times of crisis like COVID-19, the government should have funded even the education sector like they are funding others. And the education should be a two-pronged one, where it could be a family education by doing it. And one could be flexible, as you suggest. I do that way. I have now less than 50%. I allow everybody to opt for any course you want to.
Very good.
Even a music, you can opt for. I have no problem as a VC. Very flexible system I have brought here. And I appreciate your views on these issues, that for accreditation by NBA or NAC, we will be very, very flexible. And I have learned a lot from you today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saab, and I'm so happy that you are doing a lot of flexibility in your university. I think that's the way to go forward. Things will not happen overnight. For example, I wrote a report for Vivekananda International Foundation on STEM education, and I said, just we have gharanas of dance, we have gharanas of music, we do not have gharanas of science. And gharanas is an excellent method of flow of knowledge, which we have not adopted in science, but we have adopted in dance, we have adopted in music, and it's a successful model. So you are right, we have to strike a balance between the two models, and you are doing the flexibility, and I'm sure you are enjoying it doing, and I only believe that with the passage of time, we will get maybe 100 Bhardwaj in the country, and things will happen better and better. It will take time. For example, in one of my papers, I have written to the government, say for example, BSc. Why should BSc be physics, chemistry, mathematics only? For example, why can't have a BSc physics, material science, and TV repair? So combining skills and knowledge. Now, today's TV is not to be repaired by a useless technician. It's a very intelligent system. So somebody who knows physics will be a much better TV repair mechanic than otherwise. So why can't I have a formal BSc degree with TV repair as one of the subjects? Things like that. I have suggested this, but things take time to take shape. But we can integrate skills and knowledge to some extent in our degrees. For example, if a student is very good in laying the routers, let him do that at the cost of, say, compiler design. We have taught compiler design to every computer student all these years in the country, and we need one compiler to be designed every 10 years. So instead of that, if I teach every student how to lay the routing network, it may be better. So maybe combining some skill subjects with formal subjects is my take on this. I've prepared a paper and sent it for BSc, for BA. For example, BA, I say you need tourist guide is a profession. It's a skill. People have jobs in that. If I prepare a tourist guide, making him study tourism as a subject, history as a subject, geography as a subject. Now he'll be the most knowledgeable tourist guide in the world because he has studied history, he has studied geography. So maybe such combinations. And Dr. Sir, you will agree with me, nobody stops us from doing this even today.
True, sir. True.
We have to be just bold and do it, and let's learn to live with it. So I'm very happy that you are doing it, and my congratulations and compliments to keep going further. There will be difficulties, but we'll overcome it. Thank you very much.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
बहुत अच्छा सर, थैंक यू सर. बस इन द लास्ट सर हमारे डॉक्टर मनोरिया सर जो एकेडमिक इंचार्ज हैं पूरे ग्रुप के, तो उनसे रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि सर आप थैंक्स दीजिएगा अग्रवाल सर को, प्लीज सर.
A very good afternoon to everybody, and thank you so much, sir, for giving me opportunity to give the vote of thanks. I am Dr. Manish Manoria, Director of SIRT and Academic Advisor of Sagar Group of Institution. Sir, I express my deep sense of gratitude to Dr. K.K. Agrawal for accepting our invitation and throwing very good information related to emerging trends in higher education and accreditation. Sir, you have very well explained that how to live with the situation of lockdown and pandemic and how to find the opportunities from this situation. I am really fortunate, sir, that we have two chairmen sitting over here. One is the NBA chairman and one is the chairman of the Sage Group, and both are talking to on the same platform that try to find the opportunity and try to live in this situation. So every day we are listening such type of thing from our chairmen, sir, also, and I am happy that you have also given the same path. Sir, you have very well explained that COVID is a virus, and just as in the system, we need to format the system whenever the virus is affected. In the same way, we have to redesign the system in the situation of the COVID. And definitely we need to redesign the system. We need to redesign the education system also. And as you have explained that we have the 33 crores of students in the country, and we have to focus on those students, and these students have very good potential also. So looking to this, we have to leave our conservative attitude, just as it happens in the affiliated institutions, which are means those institutions which are affiliated to the universities. We need to change the mark system, and we need to creditize the mark system. We need to leave the our conservative theory paper approach. Instead of this, we need to focus on hypothetical problem projects and hackathon type of things. And I have seen in this pandemic situation also that in USA, such type of examination have been done in Oxford University, in University of Cleveland. I have 2 or 3 familiar members are studying there, and they told me that we need not to suppose to give the theory examination. Instead, we are given some certain type of problem and hackathon type of event, and we have to solve that problem within 24 hours, and we get the credits on the basis of our solution. So everything is important that, and you have given very good example that one type of question is given that students are asked to give any question and solve it, and you will get the marks when depending upon how well you formulate the question.
नमस्कार सर, सबको
It was a
धन्यवाद,
pleasure.
ऑल सेजियंस को धन्यवाद, सब पार्टिसिपेंट को धन्यवाद.
It was my pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you.